So, Nightreign's good, and I totally didn't play for hours on end when I should have been writing this script. Moving on, this game is really fun, and the characters, while not customizable like a normal FromSoft game, are just as fun as the game itself, each one fitting into a pre-made role. And not only do they have these roles, like the Guardian being a tanky boy, the Duchess being a standard assassin type, but each of these characters have their own tragic backstory for why they've been drawn to the Round Table. And you as the player get to expand on these stories and in some cases get closure for the characters. And because I might as well get some work out of dropping, let's see, like 100-ish hours in this game already, I decided that it would be fun to build some of them in D&D. Oh, and this video is sponsored by World Anvil, but more on them later. Now before we can actually get into these characters, we need a little bit of context, and because this is a FromSoft game, the lore is, well, a little spread out. But we're just going to go over the basics of who these characters are, why they're here at the Round Table, and what got them there. The 8 Nightfarers are people from across and beyond the lands between that have been drawn here to the Round Table for one goal: to put a stop to the night by defeating the Night Lord. And of course, because this is a FromSoft game, this is not nearly as simple of a task as it sounds. Because there isn't just one Night Lord. Just like the Nightreign timeline is a split timeline from the regular one, each of these Night Lords is a part of a whole, each one split from the true Night Lord, the aspect of night. So to put an end to the night, they must continue going on their expeditions. Each time they fail, or they slay a lord, they get closer to ending the night for good. But despite there being 8 total characters, only 3 can go out on an expedition at a time. So to keep in line with that, and in hopes of us getting a new character and maybe new maps soon, I'm only going to be building 3 of them here, and can cover others in a future part 2 if this video does well. So if you do want to see more stuff like this one, do all the YouTube stuff, like the video, subscribe if you aren't already, and go ahead and tell me who your favorite Nightfarer is in the comments. You will learn mine very soon. So that means I had to choose only 3 characters, and while I could have gone with some basic stuff like the Wilder, I wanted to go with a few different ones. First off, the Revenant, yes for the memes, but also because she is probably one of my favorite characters to play. The Guardian, since tank is my favorite class to play in these kind of games, even if I am kinda shit at the Guardian. And the last one I picked purely because it seemed the most fun to build: the Executor, who decided that he was going to play Sekiro instead, but still showed up to the party. And as a little side challenge for me, because the max level in-game is 15, I built all these characters without going above that level. So, enough of that, let's get into these builds. Oh, and obvious spoilers for these characters' remembrances. The Revenant, like I said, is probably one of my favorite Nightfarers to play. Maybe it's the summons, maybe it's how strong her incantations are, or maybe it's how ridiculously small she looked holding the Giant Crusher. I'm not sure. But at the same time, the Revenant not only has the clearest reason for why she wants to slay a Night Lord, and the most graphic backstory for how she got here. The Revenant, much like Ranni in Elden Ring, is a soul within the body of a doll. But unlike Ranni, who willingly died to attach her soul to a pre-made vessel, the Revenant never intended for this. In life, she was a girl named Chloe who was murdered in the night by an unknown man. This could have been her own father driven mad by the night, but more likely someone that broke in going by the broken window. And right here in her room next to her favorite doll made by her grandfather, Chloe would meet her end and be revived as the Revenant. Or at the very least, that is what she believed. Because by going through her remembrance, the Revenant would slowly come to realize that she was never Chloe. She was always the doll, and her name, given to her by Chloe, was Daphne. And even in the scene where Chloe dies, we can see Daphne reaching out, almost like she's trying to protect her owner who took such good care of her. And this is her true motivation, her reason for fighting against the night, as a way to avenge her owner and give her peace in the afterlife. Now with the darker stuff out of the way, I think it's pretty clear what we're going to do for the Revenant's backstory and even lineage. And given that for some time the Revenant believed she was a noble girl, the noble background is pretty fitting, giving her the skilled feat along with history and persuasion. But I think her lineage is going to be a bit more interesting. It's not exactly known what caused Daphne to come to life, maybe it was Chloe's strong desire to live, but it's also not an uncommon idea for beloved objects to be given sentience and life in Japanese folklore. And for these reasons, I think the Reborn is a great option for the Revenant. She doesn't need to eat, sleep, or breathe, and gets some knowledge left over from her past life as Chloe's doll, like doing makeup. But when it comes to her stats, well, usually this would be kind of hard with this kind of game, since you can build a character in a lot of different ways. But in Nightreign, we actually have a set scaling for each character. And looking at the Revenant scaling tells us, well, not a lot right off the bat, but I'm going to do my best to convert these into some normal standard array stuff for D&D. So with an S in Faith being her highest stat, and Wisdom kind of being associated with religion and stuff like that, means that high Wisdom is a given. And since there isn't anything that really fits with Arcane, I'm just going to give her a passing Charisma since she is a very well-made doll. And while her Vigor or HP is a D, she has a simple C in Strength and Dex, but because I really don't want to dump Con, she is going to dump Strength. Look, I love the memes of the Revenant being a tiny gremlin wielding colossal weapons and smacking everything in the face. Hell, I do it in plenty of the runs I play as her. I probably did it in the run you're looking at right now. But she really isn't made for it, and I'm trying to be faithful to the character, so yeah. Oh, and Intelligence is okay, she just really doesn't need it. Moving on from her stats though, let's take a look at her in-game abilities. Now in Nightreign, the Revenant is a summoner/caster. Her high faith meaning she's great with incantations, and she can deal some really good damage with good spells. But on top of that, she makes up for her lack of melee ability by having 3 specific summons. The family page, Helen, the cook Frederick, everyone say hi to Frederick, and of course the best summon, the one-armed giant skeleton, Sebastian, who while he can't move from where he's summoned, he does have a giant arm for smashing and a laser for long-range attacks. Notably, the Revenant also has a passive ability that brings fallen enemies back to life for 1 minute to fight as spirits. She also has her ultimate that not only revives her allies from 3 bars, buffs everyone with immunity to death for a short time, but also unlocks special attacks for all 3 of her summons. Now some of that will be really easy to get. We've just got to get spellcasting, summoning for 3 different things, and some buffs for the summons. But the inability to die might be a little bit harder. So how does this all translate into D&D? Well, with faith being best represented as a religious or at the very least loyalty-based belief system, and combining that with our need for a little bit of Gold necromancy, I think the best class for the Revenant is going to be the Cleric. And yes, in part because of the necromancy and the ability to rest her team, but also because one of these Cleric subclasses has the ability to give us her ult, the giant ghost flame explosion that empowers her allies and helps resist death. Now, despite her being a cleric, a lot of the features here aren't actually super important, and because I want to focus mostly on the spell stuff, I went ahead and gave her these feats and ASIs to help keep her at a good range, and make sure her summons stay up for as long as possible given her pretty low constitution. Those being Spell Sniper, specifically for Frenzied Burst, a +2 to her Wisdom with her next ASI, and then the Warcaster feat for better concentration. And yeah, I could have gone with like the Conjurer Wizard so damage can't break concentration, but the Revenant is not a wizard. If anyone's a wizard, it's the Recluse, and we're not building the Recluse today. Anyways, given that she has 3 ASIs, the Revenant is going to be at least level 12 in Cleric. But to make sure we cover her ult, she's actually going to be a full 13 levels for the spell Power Word Fortify, giving her a ton of temporary hit points to split up amongst her party, and while it's not immunity to death, it is pretty close. But the most important thing here are her summons, Helen, Frederick, and Sebastian, and I think each one can be covered by a different spell. Oh, and her passive can just be like the Animate Dead spell, I guess, since she does have to kill the enemy first. You know, as long as your teammates actually let you get the killing blow. But let's go over some of these spells I think fit for her summons. And for Helen, who is not only the fastest but also the weakest of the summons, great to send in first, I think there are a couple of options you could go for with her. And personally, I really like the Spiritual Weapon spell for Helen. Now, it has gotten a bit of a nerf in the 2024 version, so it's not as good as it was before, but Helen is the weakest summon, so it should be fine. Next up, we are going slightly out of order here with the Butler, Sebastian, the giant skeleton that notably cannot move. He ain't got no legs.
Brother, I am pinned here!
And while he can't move, he will sit where you summon him and absolutely clobber anything and everything that comes nearby. And while you certainly could summon something and just not move it out of spite for the flavor, that's not my plan here, because there is a spell the Revenant can get that fits the Skelly Boy here perfectly. And that is the 4th level spell, Guardian of Faith, that not only cannot move from its summoning position, it will also attack anything that comes within a 10-foot radius of it. And while these aren't normal attacks, Sebastian will still swing at anything and everything in that range, forcing them to make a dex save or take 20 radiant damage. Now sadly, Sebastian does go away after dealing 60 damage, but a 13th level Revenant has 3 4th level spell slots, so that is 180 damage that she can deal if she summons him back to back. Plus, unlike in game, Sebastian can tag team with either Helen or Frederick since Guardian of Faith doesn't have concentration. And speaking of Frederick, he is amazing. Just look at him. How could you not love Frederick? He is the tankiest of the summons, I think, and unlike Sebastian, he can run around and beat stuff up, take aggro, and even revive your teammates for you. And to make sure Frederick can actually do all that, the spell Summon Celestial is going to be our best bet. It only takes 1 action to cast, and lasts for up to an hour with concentration. And during that time, given that you picked the Defender option, Frederick has an AC of 17 and only 40 hit points. That's Fine, because one of his attacks lets him consistently give himself temporary hit points on top of healing and buff spells that the Revenant can throw on him, like Power Word Fortify, which would give him a full 120 temp HP on top of that 40 HP he already has, meaning he can pretty much tank the entire boss fight. And since the other summons don't really have stat blocks, most of the Revenant's buffs, the ones without concentration at least, are going to all go onto good old Frederick. Now there is still one thing missing here, her subclass. And I mentioned before that her subclass would not only help us get her ult, but also one of her character-specific relic passives. And for this, the best cleric subclass for the Revenant, that I can think of at least, is the Peace Domain. And I'm sure you could go like full Necromancy with the Death Domain, or some other subclass or class combination entirely, but none of those really feel right considering the fact that she's always summoning the same 3 spirits and not commanding an army of random undead. Anyways, the main reason I picked this is because of the main feature, Emboldening Bond. Letting the Revenant pick up to 5 creatures, including herself, and buffing them, giving them a d4 to add to an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw once per turn. And the level 6 feature is even more fitting, literally having her summons diving in the way of her attacks as long as they are within 30 feet of her, so the super buffed up Frederick with Power Word Fortify can tank even more hits. And with this, the Revenant should just be able to sit in the back of the fight and support her team with heals and other spells, while her summons make up for her not being there in melee. Or you could take Tasha's otherworldly guise and rush in like a gremlin swinging around a weapon 3 times your size like Ishizaki clearly intended. Yeah, I'm gonna do that one.
Thou art good to thy word, my dear. So, what is thy desire? Indeed, though scattered thou wast, thou art now whole. All is well.
See how they line up like sheep to the slaughter.
Now, while I do want to get to the other 2 members of this party, we need to first talk about the sponsor for this video. And this week, that is going to be World Anvil, a great tool for GMs that helps with keeping your different files and character sheets sorted, but the main draw, at least for me, is the ability to make super customizable and interactive maps for your players. And because I haven't really been playing much of anything outside of Nightreign for the past 2 weeks, I'm going to use that as an example. Because I have toyed around with the idea of something like this before, a game where the characters repeatedly die and come back only to try again, or different characters come in for different sessions like a West March. And if you wanted to change things up for each run, like say having parts of your map swap out with other ones, or just easily move locations around a pre-existing map to make sure things aren't always the same, World Anvil is great for that and super easy. So making a map like Limveld here and running each session like a race to the final boss with an ever-changing map, and maybe even running into your old bodies from previous runs, really wouldn't be all that hard of a task. And if that's not exactly what you're looking for, World Anvil still has other tools to help you write characters and even do world building that you can keep all in the same place for easy access. And the same thing goes for your players and their character sheets, you can have that all on the same site. And kind of as a fun little aside thing, we actually made all 3 characters we're looking at today also in World Anvil. And thankfully, the people over at worldanvil.com were nice enough to not just give us a discount code for you guys to use with code GMG, but they gave us a 51% code for any yearly plan. And these things range from the cheapest being $45 a year all the way up to $300 for the whole year. Meaning that by using our code, you could cut each of those in half, down to below $22 and $150 for the big one. So if you're a DM who, like me, has trouble keeping all their stuff organized, you should definitely go check out World Anvil, after you finish the video of course. There is a link in the top of the description and in the pinned comment down below. Thank you once again to World Anvil for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to our party. The Guardian, the Round Table's resident tank, well, one of them along with the Raider. But unlike the others, who besides the Revenant are all pretty human in appearance, well, at least I think so, there's no telling what's under Iron Eye's mask, I guess, but the Guardian is decidedly not human, and is instead a member of the Pinion Folk, a race of bird people. And with their wings, they dominated the skies along the battlefield, and the Guardian was no different, diving into battle with his shield in one hand and halberd in the other. But you might have noticed something in-game. Aside from his ultimate, where he does it for a very short time, the Guardian, despite being a birdman with wings, can't fly. And yes, that is in part because his left wing is so mangled. No, not my fault, I swear. But the main reason he can't fly is because our bird friend here is cursed. During a pivotal battle, the Guardian, along with the rest of his flock, were all hit with a powerful curse, draining them of their ability to fly. And even though the Guardian stayed behind to hold off the enemies so the rest of his allies could escape, as far as I'm aware, none of them did. Leaving the Guardian as one of, if not the last Pinion Folk, at least that I know of. And while I could go into some more details involving the Recluse and how she fits into the Guardian's story, I might save that for another video. Again, if this video gets like 15 to 20k views, there will be a part 2 covering some other characters. So, given that the Guardian is both a bird and a knight of sorts, what does this mean for our setup? Well, pretty obviously he is a soldier given that he was at one point a captain of a unit, but I did swap out the Savage Attacker feat for the Tough feat, because his HP scaling is super high, he kinda needs it. And even easier to see than that stuff are his bird features, including wings, albeit broken as they are, talons, and an eagle-like head. So for once, the Aarakocra fits 100%. And while normally I would have to worry about the fact that our boy here wears at least medium armor, although I'm probably going to call this heavy, along with carrying a tower shield which would stop him from flying, but like I said, he already can't fly on account of his curse, so we don't really have to worry about that. And on top of that, being an Aarakocra gives him his skill with the Wind Color feature, giving him 1 free cast of Gust of Wind. Now taking a quick look at his scaling here for his stats, we can see that the Guardian doesn't have the best stats. Sure, he's got an S and A in Vigor and Endurance, which both kind of match up with Constitution, but everything else is middling or just bad. Which means overall his stats are going to look like this, with a 17 in Con right off the bat, followed by Strength, Charisma, Wisdom, Dexterity, and then Intelligence as his dump stat. I wouldn't go so far as to call him bird-brained, but like with a lot of these characters, he just really doesn't need it, so it gets dumped.
Stand your ground and raise your shield.
But the Guardian stats are not as important as his actual abilities, which are admittedly a bit weird, but I think they're good for a tanky support-style character. With his passive making him a lot more sturdy so he can tank hits better, really just being like a shield stance, his skill being a big gust of wind that knocks enemies down, and his ult which is really just launching himself into the air and dive bombing your down team, reviving them, and buffing them for a time after the impact. Now there are a bunch of ways to make a tank in D&D. Check out my Kingdom Hearts video for another shield-focused tanky character. And while I did mess around with a few of those ideas, just being tanky isn't our only goal here. The Guardian needs to be better than the average shield user and have aura buffs. So I'm sure some of you know where this is going, but I think our best bet to get as close as we can to the Guardian is for our Bird Knight here to be a Paladin, getting the Protection Fighting style and the Sacred Weapon Channel Divinity from going with an Oath of Devotion. You could also go with Oath of Redemption if you wanted to reflect damage, or Oath of the Crown if you wanted to force focus on you, but I have plans for his ult and need devotion for it. But before that, we need to make sure that the Guardian has the proper defenses, starting off with the Heavy Armor Master feat, giving him a flat damage reduction to any damage he takes from weapons and upping his con. Plus at level 6 and 7, he gets the Aura of Protection feature and Aura of Devotion. Not that his charisma is all that high, but any buff to your party is a buff to your party. On top of this, he maxes out his con at level 8 with a +2 ASI, and ups his strength a little at level 12 with the Shield Master feat, letting him do a Shield Bash and using his shield to add the shield's AC bonus to his dex saves. It's not quite as passive shield stance, but it will help keep him standing between the boss and his team for a little bit longer. But the big thing for his ult comes all the way at level 15. Remember, yes, his ult does some damage on impact, but that's not the focus of it. The point of his ult is to res his down teammates, and if he holds it, he gets to block damage for them and himself. And with a combination of a few different things, I think we can get just that. You know, as long as we ignore the dumb new smite rules of it being a concentration spell, which we will be because I hate it. So this combo is a bit of a two-turn thing, and while it doesn't technically launch the Guardian into the air for a dive bomb, it does achieve the same effect. First, the Guardian needs to have the Aura of Life spell already cast on himself, which both gives resistances and stops maximum hit points from being reduced. But the main thing we're looking for here is its ability to instantly res down creatures within a 30-foot radius, giving them 1 HP. Now this alone already covers the reviving part, but also by running in and smacking whichever enemy he needs to with Divine Smite, the Guardian can now protect his newly resed allies with the Smite of Protection, giving all of his allies within the range of his Aura of Protection half cover, upping their AC by 2. This way, not only is he dealing up to 2d6 for both attacks, plus 5d8 for a 4th level smite, or 6d8 if they are fiend or undead, but also buffing his team more than usual and reviving anyone who's already down. And that combined with Gust of Wind and Shield Master do a pretty solid job of covering all of his base abilities, plus the Protection Fighting style should kind of force enemies to focus on him instead of your team. Now if you really wanted, you could take a few fighter levels to go into Cavalier for Action Surge and Unwavering Mark, but remember, all of these builds are made to be level 15 or lower, and that would push the Guardian over the limit. The Guardian is a great tank, a different kind from the Raider for sure, more focused on pulling aggro, blocking attacks, and buffing his allies instead of just tanking hits and punching back really hard. And having even a half-decent Guardian on your team should make it no problem at all to put an end to the Night Lord. Hell, even if one of your teammates leaves mid-fight, nothing is getting through the wall that is the Guardian. Unless it's the Bellbearing Hunter, if it's that, just run.
I hesitate to ask. Good champion. But would you mind explaining what happened between you and the Raider? You speak of the chivalric band to which you belonged. How did you come to lose them, as you say? I see. A tragic tale indeed. And your form, heartbreaking. Though it boggles the mind to think there was an attack which your defensive prowess could not overcome. Indeed, what could have caused such a thing? Oh, the scarring. This is the work of an accursed blade.
I will curtail the threat that awaits us.
The Executor, a character that seems like they were ripped right out of an early version of a Sekiro sequel, only to get dropped back down in a completely different game. And despite the fact that I am garbage at parrying, he is super fun, and when you get those clutch parries, it is such a good feeling. The Executor is a strange character, fused with his very armor and carrying around a cursed sword, and before his time as a Nightfarer, he spent time in a prison within the Lands Between, but his exact crime is buried a little deeper. But we do know that he was so captivated with the beauty of the Erd Tree upon his arrival in the Lands Between that he not only abandoned his homeland, but even became a Crucible Knight in service to the Golden Order. However, even his adoration for the Erd Tree wasn't strong enough to make him abandon his honor, and after completing many jobs for the Golden Order, his guilt did eventually catch up with him and he seemingly ended his own life. Obviously though, with how death works in Elden Ring, he couldn't truly die. And I believe that this here is actually why he was imprisoned, but also fused with his very Crucible Knight style armor as a form of punishment. I think the act of taking his own life was seen as defiance and possibly shame for the Golden Order, and they punished him for that. Now there are a few different ways this could go for his backstory and lineage, and while he does have armor melted into his flesh, I'm assuming he's still human under there, or at least as human as he can be when he can turn into a giant Crucible monster. And yes, while he was a member of the Crucible Knights, I'm going to go with his most recent thing for his background, so that's going to be the criminal since he was in prison. This comes with the alert feat and savage attacker from being a human. And just like with the other two, I'm going to look at his scalings to get his stats in order. With an S in both Dex and Arcane, that mostly means two things. Obviously his Dex is going to be pretty high, it's right there, but we also need to figure out what stat is best for Arcane. And well, this might tell you a bit about what my plans are here, but I'm going to put that into Wisdom. Meaning that his other stats look like this, with a 13 in Strength, 12 in Con, 10 in Charisma, and 2 in a row he dumps Intelligence. And with that out of the way, let's quickly go over his abilities so we can kind of toss one in the garbage right away. First up is his passive Tenacity, giving him a boost to his damage and stamina after he recovers from a status like Poison, Frostbite, or Bleeding. And look, I'll do my best, but this is the one I was just talking about when I said I was going to have to throw something out. On the other hand though, his other two features are not only more important, but overall a lot more easy to implement. Those being his parrying ability, letting him perfectly block attacks and even auto-block certain rapid-fire ones. This also charges up his Curse Blade, which might be a little hard to implement, but I think I have something for that. And of course, his ultimate, where he abandons the sword and lets the dog out, smacking and slashing at his enemies with huge claws, gnashing teeth, and a crucible horn on one arm. And on top of all this, he has a very samurai-esque feel to him. Yes, he has a katana, but he also has a special moveset with said katana. So, let's start knocking these abilities out. And first we are going to get, well, 2.5, kinda. Because to start, the Executor is going to take a few levels in the Samurai Fighter, which not only gives him the dueling fighting style for a little bit of extra damage, but also fighting spirit, which is the best thing I can think of for tenacity. It doesn't give him a boost to his damage necessarily, but it does give him some temp HP and advantage in all of his attacks. And at level 4, I'm sure some of you saw this coming because I give it so many characters that have a parry ability, the defensive duelist feat letting Executor add his proficiency bonus to his AC as a reaction. And at level 15, that is a +5, which is pretty damn good. And at the end of Fighter, yes, he's stopping pretty early in Fighter, the Executor is going to grab a +2 bonus to his Wisdom at level 6, upping it to 18, and getting the Elegant Courtier feat at level 7 to finish it off. But from here, we still have two things, his ult and the whole glowing cursed sword thing. And since I gave him such high Wisdom, I think it's pretty obvious that the Executor's second class is going to be a Druid. And while yes, Wild Shape is a good option for his transformations, even using the increased CR of the Moon Druid, things are, well, limited. With the best thing at this point that he can turn into being a tiger or polar bear, which just doesn't feel right. The aspect of the Crucible Beast form has a ton of hit points, so we need something else for some more prolonged use. And I think that comes with a full 8 levels in Druid, not only for 4th level spells, but also for 2 more ASIs. One for the speedy feat so he can get in and out of combat quickly, and the other one for a final +2 bump to his dex. Now these 8 levels also get the Executor some important features. One of those being Elemental Fury, giving him extra damage once per turn on one of his attacks, which I think is a great way for his parry build-up attack to work. He also gets Wild Resurgence, giving him another use of Wild Shape if he needs it. But the big thing from Druid here for his Crucible Beast form is going to very simply be a spell, that being Polymorph, letting the Executor transform himself into something of CR equal to or less than his own level as long as it's a beast. And since he's all the way at level 15, he has access to every beast form that I'm aware of. And yeah, the best option for being a giant monster ripping through enemies is to turn into a huge T-Rex. Despite 10 years, a whole bunch of extra books, and an entire new version of D&D 5e, the CR8 T-Rex is still the best beast we've got. I'm not saying that it's a bad option, I just wish there was more. But that does mean that for 1 minute, or until concentration is broken, the Executor can have up to 136 hit points on top of his normal HP, and hit for around 53 damage every turn. On top of this, he can still use all of his features from Fighter like Action Surge, Second Wind, and Fighting Spirit. Or he can cast buffing spells on himself that don't have concentration. He can keep those up even if he can't cast new spells with his tiny T-Rex arms. Now at the time of writing, I've only really just started to get a hang on this character, but those parries are so good when you get the perfect parry on a move that would otherwise kill you. And while his build here is pretty weird, I think it's plenty fun, if not a little different.
Behold its majesty. It never fails to move me. Peer upon it from afar. Be satisfied with what you have. I will curtail the threat that awaits us. And any who dare disturb such peace, face my blade.
These characters are really fun to make, and like I said, if this video does well, I will happily make another set of characters. I'm thinking Raider, Recluse, and Wilder? Who knows? That would leave Iron Eye and Duchess out until a DLC character came out, but we'll see. Anyways, as always, a big thanks to my testers. I know that I sprung these builds in them before they even got the chance to really play the game, but thank you. And my patrons for supporting the channel. Remember, if you want to commission your own team, you can do that on Patreon for just $20, only once a month. Oh, and of course, remember to go check out our sponsor, World Anvil, using code GMG for a 51% discount to whatever thing you want to get from them. There's a link in the description and the pinned comment below if you're interested. But that is going to do it for today. I will see you all next time, and as always, have a wonderful day.